Today, I want to talk to you about esports versus traditional sports and how the coronavirus pandemic has showed us that esports is the future of most sports. What are esports? Esports stands for electronic sports. It's the world of competitive video games. Most competitive video games have an esports attached to them nowadays, and the big ones have grown massive. Esports have gone from little conference halls to these massive stadium-filling events around the world with thousands of fans attending to watch the big games. So in 2019, the four biggest esports are Dota, CSGO, League of Legends, and Fortnite. These games are huge and they have some of the biggest prize pools for any esports tournaments around the world. The combined total of the prize pools for these four games is $141 million in the year of 2019. In 2019, League of Legends on its own had a world final with a prize pool of $9 million. The next game is CSGO with a total grand prize of $24 million US, over doubling the 9 million for League of Legends. And even larger than CSGO is Dota 2, with a prize pool of $46 million in 2019. But even that doesn't come close to the prize pool of Fortnite in 2019, where for one of its events it had a prize pool of $64.5 million US. Due to the insane prize pools and the viewership that these games are now attracting, we've seen the rise of a new era of teenage millionaires. For example, in League of Legends, you have Faker, who's worth over $5 million before the time he was even 21 years old. Following that is Universe in Dota, who also is worth around $5 million by the time he was 20. But both of them don't compare when you look at Coldzera in CSGO, who's worth a whopping $116 million from his sponsorships and his winnings over the years. These events have had a massive growth in viewership over the course of the years. In 2019, the esports world had a total of 455 million viewers, and is projected to have 650 million viewers by the year 2022. Even with this massive growth in viewership, esports are still far behind traditional sports in terms of viewership. Football had 4 billion viewers in 2019. Cricket followed that by 2.5 billion. Formula 1 with another 2 billion. And tennis with 1 billion. Under normal circumstances, esports would have taken decades to catch up to traditional sports. It would have had to wait for children to grow up with these games in order to watch them as the viewership expand. But thanks to the coronavirus, esports had a massive acceleration boost. In order to understand how the coronavirus boosted esports popularity, we have to understand what it did to traditional sports in the first place. And in order to understand what it did to traditional sports, we have to understand how these sports make money. Traditional sports have three sources of income. Firstly, commercial, sponsorships, etc., and selling their merch. Second is match day and all the tickets and the money that they make at the matches themselves. And then the biggest one of them all, broadcasting, where they sell rights to TV channels to broadcast their games for millions and millions of viewers. Out of the three sources of income, broadcasting constitutes the majority. All media rights for all sports around the world are worth an estimate of $50 billion a year. Due to the coronavirus, all physical matches of any form of sports have been cancelled in fear of spreading this virus further. Which means that there's been no games for any of these massive sports. No football, no Formula 1, no cricket, and no tennis. The cancellation of all these games meant that those leagues could not meet the requirements of the media channels that they had agreed to. So in turn, the media channels didn't pay them, so they've had no money for this year. Most sports have tried to do something about that to keep the fans entertained. So a lot of sporting channels have just been replaying events again and again, which means they're just literally another ESPN classic. And people have been upset with it, but they've been paying for a subscription and getting absolutely nothing in return. These sporting channels, on average, have witnessed 35% drop in viewership and 25% drop in subscriptions. While sports have been suffering, esports on the other hand have been blossoming. In the beginning of the lockdown in March, Twitch, which is the biggest streaming platform in the world, had an average 1.6 million viewers per day. By the end of April, they had 2.5 million viewers daily. Unlike traditional sports, esports had an advantage. And that advantage is the fact that they were capable of switching to a completely remote system where the players still played the tournaments online from the comfort of their own homes. Some traditional sports actually managed to come up with very innovative solutions to what was happening, and such is the case of Formula 1. In light of all the cancellations of the F1 races that took place over the course of this year, F1 decided to host its first virtual Grand Prix, where it had actual Formula 1 drivers competing versus one another in its F1 2019 video game. For F1, that transition was a lot less seamless than it would have been for any game, as Formula 1 drivers already spend hours daily inside of simulation rigs practicing, so that the skills that they have in that sims easily transfers to a virtual Grand Prix. We've seen F1 drivers such as Charles Leclerc, George Russell, actually outperforming esports professionals in the F1 games, so just to show how much that skill transitions. Unfortunately, not all sports can transition the same way F1 did. A footballer's skills would not translate to a PlayStation controller. What do you guys think? Are esports the future of all sports? Let me know in the comments, and remember to like and subscribe.